Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's January 19th, 2014, and this week we're going to do a lesson covering a beginner's guide to arpeggios. Now, the question was sent in from Josh. He's in Cooper City, Florida, and he wrote in with this email: I just finished working through every exercise in your ebook using the major scale modes, and now I need to begin study of arpeggios. You mentioned how important they are. The thing is, I've downloaded arpeggio patterns and started the technical practice, but I'm hung up on how to truly begin using them. Could you consider a lesson that's a beginner's guide to arpeggios? From Josh in Cooper City, Florida, USA. Well, hey, thanks for writing in, Josh. Arpeggio study is sometimes done along with the study of scales. However, most often, the arpeggios are practiced more of an afterthought. In other words, they're worked on after guitarists will learn the pentatonics and the major to minor scale patterns, and sometimes even after there's been a study of the modes. It's kind of too bad because being good at playing arpeggios can offer guitar players a lot of interesting melodic phrases and also cool technical concepts such as sweep picking. So in this video, I'll be discussing what a beginner's guide to arpeggios would be, as well as which arpeggios are important to get a good handle on. So let's begin with a quick overview of my recommended order for learning the arpeggio types.
Now, before we go to the guitar fingerboard to begin learning a practical way to create melody and apply the use of the arpeggios, I want to discuss which arpeggios are important to develop initially into your guitar playing, and I want to do that by way of categorizing them into two categories: the triad arpeggios and the seventh quality arpeggios. And I want to just go through here what we're looking at. In the triad categories, it's important to understand that there's four main types. There's the major triad, minor, augmented, and diminished. And in the seventh quality chords and arpeggios, we have the major 7, dominant 7th, minor 7th, and the minor 7 flat 5, also very commonly known of as the half diminished. Now, underneath, I have also given the formulas. The creation of the chords and the arpeggios are done by way of chord tone construction formulas. You can see here the root 3rd and 5th of the major scale gives us the major triad. If we want to convert the major triad to a major 7th, we add on the 7th degree of the scale, so now we have root 3rd, 5th, and 7th. And you can see here there's some alterations that happen for dominant 7th. We have a flatted 7th degree. Minor triad has a minor 3rd, and you can see here in the minor 7th there's a minor 3rd as well with that minor 7th. There's an augmented 5th in the augmented triad with major 3rd, and then there's a minor 3rd with a diminished 5th and the diminished triad. You can see here in the minor 7 flat 5 we have essentially a minor 7th chord, but then we lower the 5th and we attain the minor 7 flat 5 quality. Now, of course, if you didn't know by now, arpeggios are really chords, but it's a chord played in a broken manner, which allows us to cover more of the fretboard region and thus get more notes where we can apply for a more streaming melody application, breaking the chord into its individual chord tones and getting a better layout of individual tones across the neck. Now, with all that behind us, let me just run through the manner in which I think I've found over the last 20 years of teaching this stuff is a very good way to approach it. I would say, from my personal experience, a good way to begin working on arpeggios is to start with the major 7 and the minor 7th arpeggios. Then, afterward, remove the 7th and work on the triads. So then you'll have the major and minor triads. It'll be a very easy learning experience because all you're going to be doing is just dropping one note. You'll already be very familiar with the patterns, and should be a real no-brainer to move into that category. From this point, it's kind of a toss-up. It's up to you what you want to do. You could go into doing dominant 7ths, which is kind of what I would recommend, or you can just also begin working on the minor 7 flat 5, or you could do both at the same time. It doesn't really matter. Dominant 7ths are very, very, very valuable, so I would definitely say to put some really good effort into those. Minor 7 flat 5s can be used to create some really interesting concepts as well, so they're really valuable too. Down the road, you can begin working on your augmented and your diminished triads. You probably won't use them very much initially for a lot of rock, pop, if you like top 40 stuff, reggae or whatever, you're probably not going to use the augmented and diminished arpeggios all that much. This is why you'll probably save them for later. They do come up as really interesting arpeggios for certain types of progressive metal, progressive rock, for jazz, of course, if you're really into classical and so on. They're all valuable, but I do think that order and sequence that I discussed is a really good way to practice them and get them into your playing. It might take a little bit of time because there's a lot of shapes here to digest, but it's well worth it. So let's head to the guitar fingerboard next and just go through some practical use and application so you have a good understanding of how to really get arpeggios into your guitar playing.
Well, after you've spent a good period of time developing the arpeggio shapes on the guitar fingerboard, the next thing to do is to start applying them. Now, the easiest way to do this is to begin using them to cover a few chords in a short chord progression. See, the most basic use of arpeggio application is for the coverage of chord tones. So if you have a chord, you can outline that chord with the arpeggio itself. And this use would, of course, be the direct creation of melody using the arpeggio, using the specific notes of each chord found in, let's say, every measure of a progression you're working on. But in my first example, I have what's known as a 2-5-1. It's a very straightforward chord progression, very popular. You'll see them in jazz a lot as seventh chords. We're going to be doing it as a key of C major using triads. We'll have the D minor triad. We'll have a dominant seventh chord, just so we can outline that with the dominant seventh arpeggio, and then the C major triad as well. So major and minor triads with that dominant seventh, 2-5-1, 2 chord, 5 chord, and there's the 1 chord. So all we're going to do is keep very steady eighth notes with this and just outline the chords as they pass by. So D minor, G7, and then the C major. So here it is just from start to finish. Goes like this. So it's very straightforward. We're just going through each of the chords, straight eighth notes in a simple ascending and descending fashion. It's a really good way to begin using your arpeggios to just outline chord changes and, of course, get used to the shapes on the neck and to get your technique up with them, because generally arpeggios are going to only be one note per string, so it's going to really be pretty heavy work on your string tracking for your picking hand. But next, let's maintain this simple rhythmic meter that we've established from the first example of just using these straight eighth notes. But in this next example, I'd like to stagger the orientation of the notes found in each chord's arpeggio pattern across these string sets. Now, the way we're going to do this, it's going to break away from that straight up and down sound that we had in the beginning by just getting a little bit more random with the arpeggio patterns. And I guess our reason for doing this is kind of twofold. It'll be for both practicing the common string crossing type techniques that are associated to the use of arpeggios. Because we only have one note per string, often we need to hip and skip across different strings there. But the other reason is for breaking up the tones of the arpeggio, so that it takes us a little closer to the melodic use of the arpeggio patterns musically. We have to break them up to get that sound. So what we're going to do is on the D minor, we're going to start on the D, cross over to the A, that's the fifth, skip back to the minor third, jump to the octave, and then we're going to jump over to that minor third again up top, ending on it like that. Then when we get to the G dominant seventh chord, we're going to break that one up as well. And then same kind of deal with the C there. So just going across each one, straight start to finish, it's going to sound like this. So you can hear it's more staggered. We're more broken apart now. It doesn't just sound like we're ascending and descending like an exercise through each one of those chords, arpeggio patterns. We're just trying to break things up and hopefully leading our way to becoming more and more musical. Now, in my final example, as you might have guessed, I'll be working even more towards that practical use application for each arpeggio pattern. And this is going to involve essentially three primary ideas with a goal in the end of trying to offer a more random note selection. First of all, we're going to use more complex rhythmic meters in every measure. Secondly, the application of phrasing devices is going to become a little bit more important for us. We're going to incorporate some sweep pick concepts. We're going to have some hammer on and pull off ideas. And you can go to town with this. You can do slides and vibratos and, all kinds of stuff, grace notes, slides, and all your technical attributes can be put to good work here. But third, I want to have a more varied and repetitive use of the arpeggio tone so we can create more random note choices, like doubling up on notes, stuff like that. Just really creating more interesting melodic phrases. Now, there's countless ways for doing this. The sky's the limit, but for my example, there's only so much that I can do to fit in the 4 bars. So basically, here's what I came up with using only the notes of each arpeggio pattern, covering again the chords of D minor to G dominant and then C major. So here's the part that I came up with. So you can hear it's very broken apart. It's not like the other exercises we were doing where there were more of a steady 8th note pattern and we were really outlining in a more generic sense. And this is getting quite random with things. You have that sweep pick off the top, doubling back into that 5th chord tone of A. Then coming off the root to do that, root minor 3rd and the 5th. Then dropping back into the root of the G7 chord with a fast 16th note hammer on, coming up into that major 3rd B note on that G7 chord, and then sort of a backwards rake there. Then we're heading up into the C chord and doubling up on some notes there, heading into that C note itself. You can see how that guitar lick with those 16th notes off the top there goes to the C, then we drop down an octave to the C once again. So it really breaks it apart. It's really chopped up. Well, the study of arpeggios is one of the very best things that we wind up doing for learning how to directly target the notes of a chord. And plus, add to that, arpeggio application has many beneficial uses aside from just targeting chord tones. It can be used to cover harmonic situations where we leave the key center's harmony for all kinds of reasons. Arpeggios have a number of substitutions they can be used around, just like chords can. And then there's the technical concepts like string crossing ideas and sweep picking. So if you haven't spent the time yet, learn how to work with the arpeggios. They'll open up a whole new world in your guitar playing for you. Anyway, that's about all the time I have for today. As always, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.